I'm the new guy. So my name is Shahbaz.
Introduce yourself. Yes.
Yeah, I'm the CEO of Tarmin Inc. And Tarmin is a storage company, data management company, focusing on big data as a storage requirements. And our focus is on unstructured data. And the unstructured data is pretty much 80-90% of the industry's requirements. So we're working with leading industries as well, including financial services. So in financial services, we are actually focused on storing of unstructured data from analytics perspective, as well as from the metadata and extracting the value of it. So our technology allows you to understand and also extract the metadata in a most automated manner. So you're dealing with billions and billions of objects. We have clients today in healthcare and in financial services, including NHS, including tier 1 investment banks who are using our technology with 50 billion plus objects, storing digital text information, storing pricing, data feeds, and Bloomberg data feeds, and also market information. Okay, so that's what we do. Thank you.
Thank you, Shahbaz. And welcome to the panel. This is very simple. We'll ask questions and we'll just have an engaged sort of discussion. Does anyone want to start with something for the panel?
I'm just interested from a previous background as a stockbroker and investment banker, and now actually selling software development. I'm used to a background of benchmarks and metrics. I'm just interested to hear some. I mean, we hear all the soft benefits of, you're faster to calculate your value at risk and stuff. But do you guys have any hard data on how much more efficient you are, what your return on investment is, or your yield, whatever? Do you know what I mean?
I think it's a question on me. So essentially, it's about time when you have the value risk available. If you calculate this market measure per share, then it's very easily, because you add this data in the trading system itself. Once you have the aggregate, they go across multiple systems. Then it's much more difficult, because before that you rely essentially on a batch processing, and you get data 24 hours or 40 hours after the change happened. So your aggregated risk was stale. If you are able to reduce this time to 6 hours, as we had our benchmark, then it's much better. If you can reduce it to let's say a 1 hour, it will be even better. So it was about the time once you have this aggregate value available. So that was our benchmark. How much it saves? I think it saves a lot, because you can identify a problem before it gets, for example, out of hand. You can take measures in terms of hedging your risk, buying futures and so on, before the value at risk is too high. Yeah.
I'm not sure if that was a question for us as well, but in terms of benefits, our customers can roughly double their growth of new customers. And that's essentially driven by the current marketplace, which has a substantial market for lemons problem, to use an old economics parable. They are misclassifying. The absence of data leads people to misclassify customers in a big way. So introducing new data into the system leads people to classify more correctly. So, roughly double.
Another question?
Can I just clarify a little bit on that question? When you say benchmarks, are you looking specifically for what kind of thing are you looking for?
Well, I think for a non-technical customer, let's say and I think with big data, everyone hears about this, so I'm sure it's all over the press and stuff, and you're now going to get the C-level, the financial officer or CEO, is what's all this big data about? And he's not going to understand what MongoDB relationship databases and whatever that. What he wants to see some real hard numbers. As this is going to improve your as gentleman there said, you'll double your customers, or you'll increase your calculation of your value at risk. You'll reduce the calculation time from hours to minutes or seconds or whatever it is. So that type of metric.
Yeah, so I think it's very subjective, I think, based on what your particular use case is. In value at risk, if I could have real-time risk and I can calculate my risk inside a minute or inside seconds, then what's the value to my business for that? So certainly from our perspective, being a technology vendor, I wouldn't be able to tell you a metric around from a business perspective. But what I can tell you is that actually we can calculate X amount of data in X period of time based on your particular use case, and by providing the ability to query vast sums of data in a relatively short period of time, that ultimately can have a massive impact on your business. Risk is a great metric in capital markets, calculating real-time risk, and I think we can improve the performance of that as with other open source NoSQL databases. But for actually putting a figure on it, I think it can be quite hard.
Okay, does anyone should take another question?
So you showed up the slide for the CAP theorem at the end of your talk, Ladislav. Is consistency a big problem for you? Because I know some financial houses really the mid-office and back-office fixing up of misattributed risk, and this speaks somewhat to the metrics issue later. That cost side isn't seen until much later, but what is seen is I ran this query once and got this answer, and then I ran it again and I got another answer. This is inconsistent. I don't trust this system anymore. What am I going to do? How does that show up in an audit? How is this handled by your system?
Okay, this depends on the kind of data what we have. If we have an accounting program and we calculate a loss or gain, then we need to have a relational system. But once we create a system and we want to calculate, in this case, a risk, we got update of the data. So if we calculate it now and in 10 minutes, the value is different. And it's different because new data, more up-to-date data came into the system. And then NoSQL will have its advantage in this case. We talk about a CAP theorem. It's a little bit more technical, but essentially it means that you are trying to achieve a transactional consistency of the data, and in the same time you are trying to achieve a sharding of the system, so you will be able to split large data sets in a smaller part, and then you have an availability of the system. And once it's a triangle, and once you move to one side, you are getting a little bit far away from the other. But this is the theorem, and it's true for one algorithm. You can have a system that is transactional, and in the same time it's highly available. But it's different algorithm that reads the data, for example. So that's my answer to it.
Yeah, I think with NoSQL space and big data, I think it depends on the technology you're using. And you get to choose in many of these databases whether you want strong consistency of your data or eventual consistency of your data. And there's a trade-off between read performance or write performance depending on the nature of the technology you have. For instance, from our perspective, then we're very much leaning towards the strong consistency of data even at scale. Other technologies are leaning towards more of the eventual consistency and availability of writes in a particular. So I think depending on your solution, depending on your problem, then I think we can make it. You have to choose your solution appropriately and design it appropriately.
Yeah. I mean, just to build on that, because we want this panel discussion to be eventually consistent. It depends so much on the use case. If I go onto Facebook and I don't see a post that was posted 10 minutes ago by my friend in a different country, which is what happens. Who cares? If I'm making a probabilistic decision about whether to buy a stock based on Twitter sentiment, I want it to be ready faster, and I don't care about the consistency at that point in time. But if it's an accounting system, of course, you turn journaling on and add the process of guarantees.
So in financial services in particular, you quite often have a real strong tension there in that someone has to make that do I buy this or not decision quickly, but they have to justify that decision to someone subsequently who deals with an accounting system and wants much stronger consistency. And if it was valued at this at 10 o'clock and valued at this at 20 past 10, then should I have bought it?
I guess
Am I an idiot? What?
No, this is very correct question. And if you want to justify it, you have to store the original data based on which you justify your decision. So essentially, somebody will take a look at your trades, and they will tell, okay, now the risk is that, or the share value is that. But you will tell, well, when I bought it, here I have a record that at the time the risk value was X. So this is what you have to always store the initial source data, and then you can make a decision.
So you have to repeatedly snapshot the drill down data that I believe you've all talked about.
And that is actually correct. That's what you have to do.
Yeah, you've got to version everything, and that is even bigger. So.
That has implications for data growth, I guess.
But it's the systems are built to store multiple versions in different time. So in a relational database, once you change the value, then it's changed. In these NoSQL databases, what happened? You will change different values, and this data is not lost. There is put a timestamp on the value. So now it is a number 10, and it's this timestamp. And in a couple minutes, it will be number 20, and there is a timestamp on it. So once you look through your data at certain time, you will see the values that were actual at that particular moment, and that you can actually tell, this is data I made my decision on.
Just one more thing is in financial services, people make heavy use of the atomic operators as well, depending on the platform, to get elements of the transactional approach that the traditional relational databases have. So I want to make sure I'm incrementing this value by a certain amount, and nothing else can possibly modify that value at a given point in time.
So I guess a more general question. Most of the questions so far were very specific. You brought up loyalty and insight that retailers have. So I think it was Dunnhumby with Kroger that was freaked some husbands out by sending pre-birth material to prospective mothers. What are the trends that you're seeing now in insight and in loyalty programs, or in loyalty and insight? Because the retailer, the relationship with the individual was always pretty clear. You had a loyalty card, you got points back, or you received some value from the retailer in return for giving them your data or letting them know what you shopped. A lot of what you're doing now, the customer hasn't really said, yes, you can send spiders to crawl on my Facebook or on my LinkedIn or look on all of these other things. So what are some of the trends that are happening in loyalty and in insight that you're seeing? That's what I'm really interested in.
So in the loyalty, especially in the card loyalty base, it's actually bound with, when you're actually talking to a retailer, they normally have basket management systems or things like that, which are actually stored as flat files. So what companies like Tesco, for example, what they do is they actually bind the customer with the purchases and the data that actually produced by the baskets, which are stored, and then based on that, they create the trends, what the customer has been buying in the supply chains, and the analytics actually work very cleverly. So one of the pilots that we are actually doing, which is with the leading company in Walmart, which is also basically what they're doing is they're using our object storage system with metadata. But then on top of that, what they're actually writing is a total analytics using Hadoop and interactive analytics which is what we call real-time predictive analytics, using those technologies underneath on top, the Hadoop stack. And then what they're doing is they're accessing the basket information for the consumers, and all the loyalty points and everything are added. But at the same time, the shelf information, how the shelf should be actually populated, and also how, just not the return on the shelves, as basically what products actually are selling more from the customer's point of view. For example, in certain states, there are healthcare products which are actually more popular, and certain states they're not popular. So depending on that information, they also make that decision, which is actually directly feeds into inventory and stock control system. And then also there is popular products which are basically also saying, okay, we can sell these more and fill those up, because the shelf space is very, very expensive. Then they sell that shelf space to manufacturers, which actually pay more money. So it actually has a return in that respect. So those analytics are actually producing very well for retailers, and also it appears that they are actually using in retail banking, for example, for all the products which are actually loan products, for example. And in the loan products, we're seeing the same kind of mechanism, because you have the card, let's say a chip and pin technology card, where you have the loyalty information, air miles or other customer information. Then the banks like Barclays, for example, they're using this information to see, okay, I can actually get to offer this customer the loans on different sizes depending on the credit rating. Then they actually go and they have a telesales team which actually calls you at home and say, I want to offer you a 25 grand loan. That's definitely coming from analytics.
Okay. So, I mean, this comes up with every single one of our customers and every journalist I ever speak to, and so just to be clear, we're not scraping non-public data about customers except in situations where they've explicitly given permission to our clients to do so. But there is definitely a fundamental disconnect between, there has been for a long time, between the data that people provide to an entity and the data that gets leveraged by that entity to make a decision. It maybe is getting more extreme. Certainly people are becoming more privacy conscious, but there is definitely a risk for industry associated with this, that people don't realise when they're going to 5 different websites that the cookie tracking is leading them to get served ads based on a website 4 websites ago, 2 weeks ago. And the advertising space is perhaps one of the most extreme examples of this. It's not about the person, it's about the cookie, and it's all fundamentally in compliance with the terms and conditions, but there's a level of discomfort associated with that. So what's going to happen there? I think the loyalty card example you gave is a wonderful analogy. Technologies will become more prevalent whereby people are able to make that trade-off that you described. My data is an asset. It's my asset. I'm willing to give it to a bank or someone else in return for a better product. So how can I do that? At the moment, that's not really possible in a big way in financial services. When I mentioned the first incarnation of our startup, it was exactly that. That was the idea. Put the customer in control of that data. But it's one of these things that, even every time I have a conversation with somebody in an ad tech company, I learn more stuff about exactly where my data is being passed around by different providers, and we just don't get that comfortable with that. So, difficult question.
Every time you use Facebook, you see every quarter they have a new privacy policy, which is actually coming from all the usage and patterns the users are actually coming up. So it's all analytics that they have. And in fact, they have the biggest analytics use cases that you can actually come up. All the Pig, all the Cassandra, all the Hadoop platforms that they're actually using. They have even their own total analytics team, which actually just uses that.
I just want to mention something. Even big companies like a Facebook can get it wrong. For example, I have lots of information on Facebook about myself, and in my iPhone application of Facebook, I'm bombarded with advertisement for the online casino. I never played, I never will.
That's a good point.
So I think that there needs to be a compromise between precision and between intrusiveness as well. So
I would forget consistency.
And consistency. I would say I would be more than happy if an eBay or Amazon offers me an offer that I really want. Then if it sends me 100 emails during a month, so I would say that. So another example is a price of the air tickets. So the idea was, from the point of view of the company that sells the tickets, is to have a special price for each customer based on how much he wants to pay. But it will make people angry if they figure it out that they are connected with a system that looks at how much they earn or what their credit score, and based on that they will have to pay more for the ticket. I mean, you have to be very, very careful what kind of information you will use and when you will use it.
I think someone's inferring something about your personality with those casino adverts, Ladislav. Some big data's being inferred.
I'm afraid not.
They got it wrong. So I think I think one of the trends that we're seeing, certainly because we visit a lot of these companies that are trying to gather data, and I guess one of the key things we're seeing, and this is certainly one of the trends has come out of telco, I think, is that they're trying to join data across lots of different channels. So they know where you're web browsing, right? They get your web data, they know your location, they know who you're calling. What other channels of data do they want? And in fact, how do they understand what you're doing outside of your mobile life? How do they understand that for your web browsing? How do they your mobile browsing and your web browsing? And trying to sew those together, I think, will be a key trend and something which people really want to do. If you look at what Amazon did a few years ago, they're trying to figure out what you're doing outside of your online purchase through Amazon. For instance, they said, "Oh, tell us what you've bought recently," and just click if you already own this item. It's just trying to get greater insight to you beyond the channel which they're currently engaging with you. So I think we'll see that trend. I guess the key is how they get hold of that data and how they utilize that data. We've seen that a little bit with supermarkets moving into financial services. Will we see it with telco moving into other areas? Maybe web apps moving into other areas, because I think they've all got the data. If we could join it up together, then that's going to be, well, certainly from the business side and marketeers side or other service side, be very, very powerful indeed.
I think as you said, the precision is really still a problem. I ordered 6 months ago from Amazon some GCSE books for my daughter. And I still get those basically saying, you should be buying this, and it's all GCSE list. Yeah. So I think there is a precision problem that basically comes through.
It's the feedback loop, I think, which goes into it, which is the key.
Okay, great. A quite open-ended question for you. What are you currently excited about in big data?
Really interesting question, I have to say that. Big data is basically a new way of thinking in terms of how we actually, process and live our lives. Because if you think about it, before the internet times, right, we were doing a lot of things traditionally. When online came in, everybody was talking about websites and online purchases and everything. But then after the couple of decades, what we've actually now come to a point that most of the population is coming online. And now the patterns of things are changing. Some of these speakers actually talked about the risk for the new online small financial service is actually, there isn't any risk because they can actually compete with bigger financial player. And the promise of big data really is that they can actually add value to the customers as well as consumers from that perspective. And if you think about from small startups to big companies, they're all basically using those trends and various things for one big reason. The data is actually today's economy. Business is actually run on the data. So the big data, it is actually understanding about that value from the data. Because if you get the value of the data, that allows you to make decisions, which then turns into $, and that's exactly what the big data is.
I'm afraid I've got two answers. One's very back end, one's very front end. The back end, I'm excited about endogenous outcomes, which is a bit of a statistical jargon word, but essentially Fitbit, telematics. There's a few examples of the engagement of the end customer which leads to better overall outcomes. So yes, it's one thing to monitor your walking patterns in order to price you for health insurance, but it's much better if you actually lead people to change their behaviour and live longer. Same thing with telematics. It's much better if you actually give real-time feedback to people so that they don't crash. I mean, the best price for an insurance policy is nothing. The best price for a credit card is 0% interest rate. So when there's a feedback loop between the data and the customer and people end up changing their behaviour, that's exciting. Front end, I'm excited about the engagement of analysts with the data. I think it's a very humans are very good at recognising patterns and engaging with data and visualising things. And the current visualisation world is a bit primitive in some respects, that it's still just souped up OLAP cubes. But there's some really exciting startups coming up that have just wonderful ways of visualizing big data. And again, the feedback loop, able to feed insights from that engagement with the data back into the system to say, well, this pattern of things over here and this thing over here looks interesting. When the humans plus the science get together, then 1 + 1 = 3. So people do what they're good at. So 2 answers.
Okay, so I'm excited of using big data in a healthcare industry, and essentially once all this data that were isolated before, information about your health checks, information, let's say in future about your DNA, and information about the history and about similar people with similar diseases or similar problems. If this information will be available to each doctor that treats you, that would mean really positive impact on health. And once all this information are available to the researchers, they will be able to figure it out which medicine, which drugs are more efficient for certain genetic makeup and of the person. That would mean really a positive impact. And another area is big data that are streamed from devices, from little devices that will be able to measure your body functions, that will be able to get information from the buildings, from doors that are open, from the temperature on different rooms, will be able to save your electricity bills. And then devices in the automobiles that will be able to figure it out, your driving patterns, and will be able to improve fuel consumption, for example. And in future, if these machines are connected to each other, they will be able to infer the situation about the road from the cars that drive in front of you, and that would be really a big impact.
I think from my perspective, the thing that excites me is just the pure number of possibilities that could possibly come out of storing data. The more data we've got, the more we can infer from it, the more interesting and insightful solutions will come out of it. So we've talked about insurance in the financial space, road pricing, maybe health insurance as well as a possibility. But what about all the things we haven't thought about right now? If you think that previously we just have very small silos of data and we couldn't really infer anything from it, now if we have all these different channels of data stored in some way, then we can. The possibilities are endless, and I think that's what's the exciting part of it from my perspective.
There is an exciting, there is a scary part as well. The government can actually have all the information on you, and basically, it's good for the criminals, of course, so we can actually catch them easily, but also basically is good for the citizens, we can protect them. So there is basically a e-government kind of angle, I think, where people can actually have driving licenses, passport information, also where they're traveling, what they're buying, and all that information can actually be stored.
Okay, I think we're a little over time now, so can I just thank the panel for their contributions?